What do you define as greatness?
When the soul is doing exactly what it's meant to be. I rejected that Goldman Sachs return offer, and I took a job with a little startup out in California, and that startup turned out to be Anduril.
You end up leaving and joining the military.
If you want to lead a business, you have to learn people management and leading other people. And those that are closest to the problem often have the best solution.
Just because you're higher up on the food chain doesn't mean you have all the answers.
What's the reason AI gets better and better? Constant feedback and constant data. The goal is to build forward and to push humanity forward. And we all have to be techno-optimistic. We want to build out of our current state and into a better world.
All right, welcome back to the show, everyone. We got an awesome episode today. I'm really excited for our guest. But before we introduce him, Nick, how we feeling today, bro?
I'm good, man. I'm excited to get Matt on. One, appreciate your service, Matt. Know what you did for our country. You are a very interesting individual that's gone from, these crazy high growth defense companies to being an intelligence officer in the Marine Corps and kind of, co-founder of a really interesting, startup in the manufacturing space. So really appreciative of your time. Matt is an absolute dog. He's one of few I think Justin and I know. So I really appreciate your time, Matt.
Absolutely. I'm excited to talk, guys. It's going to be great.
Okay, well, I was going to intro Matt a little bit, but Nick sort of did it right there in a way. But yeah, Nick sort of undersold Matt, and we'll get into it real quick right here. But Matt, man, dude, let's just get right into your story, bro. So Nick mentioned it a little bit. You served in the military, but before then you were at Anduril, dude. And you left Anduril to go serve in the Marine Corps. Like, what happened there?
Yeah, I like to say that shows my my risk tolerance and my level of opportunity cost. I was typical business background from New York and always knew I'd go into business one day. Father's a real estate guy, so really wanted me in real estate. And I, at a young age, told him, I was like, Dad, real estate moves too slow. And he laughed at me and said, haha, it's the best asset class in the world, and kind of scoffed in a fun, loving way. And so I went to business school as an undergrad and grad student at Wharton. And I learned a lot from my peers. I mean, learning from those that have gone before is a key, thread that I've always tried to pull on. And a lot of the best people I met in the MBA program were veterans. And so I sort of planted a bug in my head, and a lot of these guys were coming back and either transitioning to banking or coming back from banking. I said, you know what, I think I can do something unique and different. And I kind of, wanted to roll the dice and to tell a cooler story. So famously, my most proud little moment, I had an internship at Goldman Sachs, fancy investment bank in New York, the coveted job that all the business students want.
Was this post undergrad or during undergrad?
Yes, I did a crazy thing, but my last year of undergrad, I was put into the MBA program. So it was the same sort of one continuous 5-year sort of timeline. That was another unique moment of being a senior in college, but also an MBA student. It was kind of a maturing and growing moment. But I rejected that Goldman Sachs return offer, and I took a job with a little startup out in California. And I told my dad, I said, Dad, I'm going to go to California and I'm going to work for this company. And he thought I was insane and was like, you're wasting this amazing education, et cetera. And that startup turned out to be Anduril. And so to this day, I go to my dad, no building has ever produced the IRR that Anduril has, and he has nothing. So it was a lot of fun.
So you go to Anduril and you're doing M&A for them a little bit, right?
Yeah, Anduril was crazy fast moving, most amazing work experience possible. Started there literally as an intern, and they said, you're not going back home, you're staying here. And things were moving so fast that an M&A team basically came together. They said, who can do business and law and finance? And a few of us, raised our hands, one lawyer, myself, and the exec team, and we started doing M&A deals. And, bought the first 3 key companies that really became part of Anduril's amazing M&A strategy that's led by some excellent people today.
Is it because y'all had contracts with the military, and so you're just selling them more products or
It's a great question. So Palmer, right, is a genius, in every respect, is just as much one of the most impressive things about him. He's just as much of a business leader as he is a tech leader, right? He's known to be a tech leader and, was a billionaire by creating Oculus, but watching him think in the business side is even, I'd argue, more impressive. And so he had this idea And the board pushed on this, but it called it Project Voltron after some unique, not cartoons, but animated series and stuff that he likes to watch, where Voltron was basically putting a lot of things together. And we needed to move fast, right? And you'll hear this as a theme that I try to bring up throughout my own life story, my own company building, but being faster was a key metric of Anduril. And so we were building really fast. We were raising a lot of money. We were, winning contracts. But one of the best ways to increase the speed of getting on contracts was to actually buy some key tech and some key revenue contracts. And so that's what we really looked to do. And those units became really powerful business units as we went forward.
That's really cool. Keep going on the story, man. Like, what happens? You end up leaving and joining the military.
Yeah, that's the crazy part, showing my risk tolerance. So basically, been around a lot of veterans in MBA program. They were super inspiring. And then obviously a lot of tremendous veterans were built out the beginning part of Anduril's defense team and the sales team. And so I always had the bug and always was interested in doing it. And I was young and, Anduril was a smashing success. And I looked at myself, I said, hey, if I'm going to do this, this is now is the time to do it. We just closed the third pretty large M&A deal. We did a company called AREI, a company called Copious Imaging, and then Dive Technologies. So Dive was unmanned underwater submarines. And in my opinion, it probably doesn't get cooler than that. My first job would likely be the coolest I've had, but I'm good with that. I started in a good place. So I said, hey, I spoke to a lot of the veterans there, got a lot of advice, and I just had the bug, and I said, what, I'm gonna go do it. I want to become a Marine. Marines are the best of the best, as we like to say, and competitive in many respects. And I joined really for three reasons that I like to give. One was I wanted to do something that I can never do again and challenge myself. The second was that the country was very good to me, and I felt like I owed it. I actually, wanted to give something back. And the third, and this goes into the business world, there is no better leadership factory. And I wanted to learn how to lead, right? I have a lot of friends that are, tremendously successful on Wall Street in finance, and that's great. And yet they've never learned how to lead a single person in their life. And if you want to lead a business, you have to learn people management and leading other people. And if there's one skill that military training teaches more than anything, it's giving a lot of leadership responsibility to a very young person, right? A 22, 23, 24 young lieutenant is in charge of leading a platoon. And it's a very unique structure with, the senior enlisted advisor and the junior officer who go out and do that. And there's really no better training and real world experience than real leadership. Plus,
is that standard across all the Marine, SEAL, Ranger, all same kind of leadership philosophy? Structure?
Yeah, it's a great, yes. I would say military abroad, absolutely. I'm a big advocate for it, right? I did a lot of writing on it you talk about, but yes, for junior officers, every branch has unique aspects to it and unique things about it, obviously. And I'm always going to be partial to the Marine Corps, but I'm big supportive of all the branches and big supporter of military service in general. And junior officers getting leadership experience and learning that exists throughout all the service branches. And so that is a key thing that continues to perpetuate, and it's been in our country's history for now 250 years. So it's pretty exciting to see young Americans learn that leadership skill. And I think, if we want to get to the modern world, and we can jump around here, but some people forget about that. They forget about sort of the benefit of the military. There is a massive recruiting crisis in the military, and I'm always sort of an advocate to recenter people on that. A lot of young people, I say, hey, just do this for a couple of years. You'll never regret it.
Let's jump into your book, and then how that came to be. Like, when you were in the military, like, what made you really notice this? Was it your time there and during it, or post-military? Like, what inspired the book?
Absolutely. So chronology, we'll keep going in sort of the story. So joining the Marine Corps was by far the single worst, in the beginning of officer candidate school, the worst candidate there. Totally thought I would fail, wanted to drop out. Like, the culture shock was huge for me. And the opportunity cost was also huge, frankly, right? So there was a lot pushing in my mind to make sure that I made it through, right? You leave Anduril, you lose some stuff on the table, subjectively speaking, right? So I was like, hey, I'm not going to give up that so that I went here to fail, but I was pretty bad. Anyone in that training class would tell me I was probably, there were 60 people in our little platoon, about 500 people total. We lose about half of them throughout training. Training's pretty rough in the beginning part. And I was definitely thought of to be in the bottom half for sure. But I got better over time, and I learned the game a little bit. and had a lot of help from some good mentors there as well, and some people that had prior service, and so made it through. And so, way military works, you sort of Marine Corps, you go through almost a year of pretty intensive training, 9 months of everyone officer goes through, and then you specialize. So I became an intelligence officer, specifically signals intelligence. They realized this kid is somewhat technical and somewhat smart. And so they put me in SIGINT, if I can classify that. I wasn't as rough and tough as the infantry guys who are the true core of the Corps. But and I had some time to think. I was actually put on a pretty special little base somewhere in the Eastern Seaboard, and you're kind of isolated. And I was like, hey, I just went through this very unique years-long process, and I want to sort of reflect on it. And I realized the biggest thing I could add value to the national policy debate, and I'm always interested in policy, was around the recruiting crisis, because I had just been recruited from a very non-traditional path, right? An MBA with, some work experience at a company going into the military was a little bit different than someone right from ROTC from college. And I wanted to sort of reflect on that. And so it turned into this book, and the book was called We Don't Want You, Uncle Sam. It did pretty well. It was never done to make any money. It's not a profitable book. It was a net tax loss on the actual amount of time and investment I put in it. But that wasn't the point of it. The point of it was to talk about the recruiting crisis and talk about my generation, Gen Z, right? I was born 1998, and discuss the issues that why Gen Z is not joining the military and the problems we're having there.
Is that from a patriotism, or is that just from them not from a recruiting or go-to-market standpoint, touching the right people in the right places? Or I'm sure it's all of it.
Great question. Yeah, I split up the book into 21 chapters, basically. Each chapter sort of like a unique short essay, essentially on the unique topics. I would say more on the second path, right? I tried to approach it like a business problem and say, okay, what's wrong with the funnel? I think Americans are just as patriotic, and there's plenty of people that are willing to serve and do things. I just think there's a lot of dislocation between what military service could offer and what the average Gen Zer thinks, right? They're not going out there, on their Instagram influencers and seeing a lot of military content. It's not forward in their mind that this is a great career path that gives you all these benefits. It's looked at as sort of like an older, sleepier institution. And I think that's unfortunate, right? And obviously everything's competing for attention and mind share nowadays, but I wanted to put that back on the mind share and give some tactical, actual, practical steps the military can take. I had some great conversations with people in the department. They really took things seriously. Had some great conversations with some key leadership. So it was receptive. It wasn't, slam piece on what we're failing at, but it was treated with a lot of, I'll give the one little humble brag. I was on deployment. I came back from deployment. I was in 1MEF headquarters and all these colonels working, and I was actually writing something for them at the time. And I got an email from a very powerful 3-star general in the Army that served as sort of the support to the Joint Chief of Staff. And he said, "Lieutenant, I just want you to be informed that the chairman of the Joint Chiefs is reading your book because his wife bought it for him." And I was like, dang, that's a pretty cool, like, pinch me moment, right? Here I am, like 20 layers down from the most powerful senior commander in the Joint Chiefs. And all the little colonels around me, in 1MEF for like, this is pretty cool, Lieutenant, get back to work. But it was a one little moment of fun.
Did they take your advice? Did he take your advice in the book?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to claim that the book changed, giant apparatus. It was a great thought piece that got a lot of people thinking and talking. And the recruiting commands, I think a lot of them did read it and maybe got some real good tactical advice there. Recruiting is up, which is positive. There have been some positive changes. There's still a lot to do, right? This is a huge bureaucratic institution, so to change things, it takes a lot of time. But there are some specific recommendations in there that I do think they took in a good way. And again, I'm very proud of them. The military is innovative, and we work to be innovative, and we're working to be more and more innovative. So I'm supportive of everything we're doing, and we want more thought and writing. Frankly, if nothing else, the experiment was one that only could happen in the U.S. military, where a junior officer, I had no authority. I was the lowest, littlest second lieutenant there was. But because we have a democracy and we thrive in innovation and thrive in debate, it was a testament to that a junior officer can come up with some decent ideas and senior people will listen. That's one of the reasons we have an advantage over some of our adversaries. One of the huge issues that Russia has. They don't have a good senior and junior enlisted core. They don't have a good NCO core. They don't have good innovation. They don't have good. It's extremely top-down bureaucratic. Right? That would never happen where sort of a junior officer was challenging theoretically some norms and authority. And so I think it was the whole experiment from the top was actually an evidence to that. That was maybe the most assuring thing possible.
Why are we structured that way versus some of these other countries?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think at the end of the day, look, part of the American individualistic spirit, our own form of government, it trickles down, right? We realize that distributed leadership is sort of the best form. You need to let people run and do and build. That's part of the capitalist mentality as well, right? If we saw the failure of a communist state centralized system, and if you apply that to the military principles, the same thing happens. Yes, you need extreme structure and extreme ability to pass information along military channels. That is true. You need a command center. You need command and control. That's important. But one of the biggest lessons of the Marine Corps, and I'll incorporate this into company building as well, is those that are closest to the problem often have the best solution. I'll repeat that quote. I learned it in business school. I had a great professor, Adam Grant. He's a major bestseller, one of the best organizational economists. He's a great leader and a key mentor to me. I learned a ton from him. He had a great, I won't say the person's name, but a great executive come in to speak to us. She told us some really awesome stuff about leadership and being a CEO. One of the things she said, I'll never forget it. It was like the hair stood up on my neck when she said it because it was just so clear and such a good principle that I wanted to incorporate. But she basically ran a bunch of, call it fast food type restaurants as the CEO. And when she said every time she would take over one of these companies and they would instill her, she would go and she would work in the actual fast food, almost like undercover bosses. She would work at the front end of the site, or she would work in the mall fast food chain, for example, for 30 days. And she was the CEO. Obviously, it's an expensive thing. And she said, I want to learn every aspect of the business, the frontline detail. I can't command from the top if I don't learn the front line. And the quote that she said was, again, those closest to the problems often have the best solutions, and they can make the fastest decision, and they can make the biggest thing. And if things are just pushed down from higher end corporate, you're going to have a lot of stifling bureaucracy. So Marine Corps philosophy, and we can apply this to business, is structured so that decision-making is pushed down as low as possible. I mean, the basic unit of the Marine Corps is the rifle squad, about 12 people, led usually by a junior mid-level NCO, which is a sergeant, so not even a commissioned officer. And then, 3 squads roll up into a platoon that is led by like a lieutenant like me, or a commissioned officer, right? About 50 people or so in a platoon, a standard infantry platoon. And so that Marine Corps rifle squad is meant to be survivable and autonomous and make decisions by itself, all the way up to then the platoon can make decisions by itself, and then the company can make decisions, and then the battalion, and then up and up to the regiment and division. And the reason being is that you want those people solving the problems, right? That rifle squad leader is going to understand, hey, the enemy is moving to the left, and I have to call back to Lieutenant Weiss to get permission to do something. That could be deadly time loss, or I'm just going to make this decision and have the autonomy to do it. Not in a totally free willy framework, but in a very structured, autonomous way. You push decision-making down, same thing in business, you're going to get a lot more of an advantage.
I 100% agree, because I saw this in our own company too. Again, we weren't the biggest business out there, but when we had 85 employees, but it was the guy on the front lines who we were dealing with this challenge, and like we think we have the answer at the top, right? But it's like you go down to him and he's like, "Oh, we actually just need to do this," and it's like, "Well, why didn't we do that earlier?" And I think Jocko Willink actually talks about this in one of his books. I don't remember if it's Extreme Ownership or his Leadership Tactics book, but I think that's just one of the most important things to realize if you are in business. And let's talk about business here in a second. But I've experienced that myself, and now I'm pretty much like, just because you're higher up on the the food chain in the business, you're on the org chart higher up, doesn't mean you have all the answers. And I think it's really important to go down to the front lines and understand constantly. And I think I know who you're talking about, because I was in the food business. I think I know who you're talking about who did that. Sounds really cool. But yeah, man, let's get into the business stuff now, because you're doing a lot of cool stuff in business. Tell us how you got connected with Tyson Tuttle, because he's also very successful himself, and tell us about this new AI startup you guys are doing. You guys have raised a bunch of money for.
Absolutely. No. So look, Tyson's a brilliant tech leader and has been a mentor of mine for a long time. Actually, a little unknown Anduril story, but we tried to acquire a company in Austin. Deal didn't work out, but that was the first time I ever landed in Austin. And when the deal failed, I got connected with Tyson, and Tyson took me out to dinner, and he looked at me and he said, one day, kid, this is pre-military, obviously, and everything. He said, one day, kid, you're going to work for me. And so sometimes the stars just align, you get to work for your mentor. And that's been a real honor for me. I mean, Tyson is a brilliant leader. He was a very early employee at Broadcom, which is a top 10 market cap company in the world, and was on the founding team of a company called Silicon Labs, which is a public semiconductor company that he then led for over a decade as its CEO. He's on the Dallas Fed board and just invested on the board of the new Texas Stock Exchange. He's really just a regional powerhouse. Many people in Austin will say he's one of the key leading figures in the city. And so, similar to going back to that initial story with my dad, when I always wanted to work for a tech leader, and so he's really a tech leader, tech first, and to be able to work with an engineer on a problem has been a true honor. And so Tyson, when he retired out, this is a person who had tremendous personal success and decided, hey, I got one more shot at the apple. I may be approaching 60 years old, but I've studied AI for 40 years. I built a neural net accelerator at Johns Hopkins when I was in college. I can build a tremendous company and tremendous application layer outcome here. So we recruited a pretty strong initial team, and we got after it. Very quickly, things just fell into place. And that's how all these startups go, right? We were founded in his garage, and he had a great name and was able to attract some key talented players to start this thing. And we are now a year and a half old. We're announcing our initial $30 million angel round next month, which will be fun. We'll be in the press for that. And the real goal is to build. If nothing else, we want to be a builder in the AI economy and being able to provide value to where we think we have a unique advantage, but also where we think AI sometimes doesn't go. So one of the theses of the company, AI and investing, a lot of that's done on the coasts, and great respect to all the partners and people that are building on the coast. Look, I myself come from New York City, but I moved to Texas, right? I was recruited by him, and the heartland, and exactly, Texas and the heartland, the middle part of the country has tremendous people, innovators, builders, and companies. And so we really looked at that and said, we think they get a little bit less love, especially from the software world, right? No Silicon Valley engineers flying over to the middle of Wisconsin. I'll give you an example. Just 2 days ago, I was in 8-degree weather in the middle of Wisconsin, right? Population of a town, 534 people. I don't think many people from the coast are going to those towns, but those people need AI too. And those companies are tremendous key underpinnings of the U.S. economy. A lot of heavy manufacturing and industrial, and that's what we're targeting and trying to build for and go after, is really supporting those companies and creating value for them by bringing this very powerful AI revolution to them and upgrading their software stacks and really going after their labor spend in a supportive way to augment what they already have, because they themselves have a recruiting crisis, right? If we talk about recruiting, everyone has recruiting problems. So these heavier industries, technicians specifically are struggling to recruit. We don't have enough technicians in the country. Can we give them AI augmentation that helps them be more productive and maybe fills that gap a little?
How are y'all doing that? Maybe you can even explain high level what y'all are doing, but I spent the last 3 years software investing. It was more, system of record, ERP type stuff. Whereas y'all are application layer, connecting all these different, I don't even know how you do it. If it's paper, or they don't even use, because there was some, in the waste industry, we'd have customer calls with people and they don't even use software. It was to do routing. It was on a wall with little, pins in it and stuff like that, or even ACS 400 green screen stuff. How y'all are able to connect all this on-prem old stuff, or even how do you get paper documentation into some AI interface? Yeah.
No, it's a great question. And look, the world, even the first part of what you said, clearly the world, right? The system of record, ERP, sort of, we look at a lot of that as legacy tech. A lot of those companies, obviously, they're great companies and they're key parts of the ecosystem. We're not talking anything against them, but they and a lot of them are also installing their own AI. And this is the big incumbent versus challenger type thing. But we believe that there can be built a layer on top of a lot of these systems of record to better handle orchestration and specific labor tasks. So we're actually not replacing the ERP. That would not be a smart strategy and not what we're doing. But we think that with AI, natural language speech, and these new interfaces, you're able to come on the layer above and orchestrate key tasks. So for the first time, software can go after labor spend. I use the example to start as a lawyer. Let's say we had a small law firm, like 3 lawyers and, little office somewhere. That IT budget, which consists probably of an email and a website. Yeah, that's it, right? That IT budget is probably like maximum $50,000 a year, maybe for Wi-Fi and a few systems, billing, whatever. If you come in and say, hey, use my AI agent for $50,000, they would explode, right? Like their IT budget, that's literally doubling their IT budget. They would say, absolutely not, no way, get out of here. You're not going to replace whatever little IT staff they have. But let's say they have a receptionist that's making $100,000 a year. And you come in and you say, hey, use my AI agent, and it's going to either completely replace the receptionist, $50,000, so you save literally double, or massively augment that process. That becomes an interesting sell. You're going after the labor spend. And so what we're trying to go after with the new layer of software is truly labor intensive tasks and labor spend, and go after the orchestration layer in between those systems of record. Right now, there is a tremendous amount of labor that goes into just updating those systems of record and coordinating between them, and then pulling, like you said, from the pin, that the routing pin into some computer somewhere and logging it in. You can really build software that goes after and attacks that. The other beautiful thing about this is, with AI, it's basically a new way of computing. You can ingest a tremendous amount of unstructured data and new documentation. So you can actually scan in paper. We do that. We can read handwriting. You can listen to voice. You can scan in all this unstructured data. And instead of having a person go and structure it into these, rote older systems and log and structure and log and structure, you can go ahead and have a interface and a engine and frankly the circuit network that goes and does that reads this complex technical data and works in that manner. So we're actually very excited about that and think we can really augment the labor spend. Again, this isn't to replace labor. It's to augment these companies who themselves don't have enough access to it or struggling with hiring. It creates massive surplus for the economy, right? We want to be able to unlock people to do more effective and efficient work. That's really the whole goal of a lot of this knowledge work and a lot of these systems, is to build people up here.
And what's like the ICP, like how big are these? Is this mom and pop, or is this like enterprise?
Yeah, these are big. We're really going after pretty large, big enterprises, some massive public companies and some big multi-billion-dollar family companies. And this is one of the unique secrets. There are some family-owned businesses in the country that are huge, tremendous drivers of the local and regional and even national economies, family-owned, multi-generational, doing billions of dollars of revenue that no one talks to, right? It's crazy. Like these are tremendous budgets and tremendous ability to create value for them and for us, and no one's talking to them, right? So we think this is part of our geographic unique thesis and sort of where we're going. It's like we can create a lot of value for these guys, which is pretty exciting.
This is super cool. It's super niche, super unique, tying all this new technology into it as well. I'm curious, Matt, because you've worked for some really, really interesting guys, Parker and, Tyson. Like you've since being in the military too, like leadership lessons, when it comes to leadership lessons and what you've learned from them and how you're implementing that into your own business now. What do you learn from both those guys combined with the military? Like, how are you doing that, and how are you implementing your learnings into your business today?
Yeah, absolutely. It's, the whole goal, I like to say, we're all writing our life stories, so something I've optimized for has always been like, hey, like, does it sound good in the story? Is it going to be kind of a cool story to tell? I love telling stories. I'm a big story person. I think, frankly, startups are just a series of telling stories. And so I always try to vector towards unique stories, get to meet a lot of interesting people and a lot of great leaders and listen to their stories. So a few, principles and lessons that you can derive from a lot of them. One Marine Corps leader taught me, right, principles over tactics. Great little lesson there, that you always have to keep these fundamental core principles down. I think a lot of these big visionary leaders, Palmer and Tyson specifically, are true visionaries. Big tech, massive think, what the future state of the world could be, and then bring everyone around that vision to get there. And I think that's a very unique skill that a lot of these guys have. And that's something where you can really navel gaze ahead and say, okay, that's the world that we're going to. You see massive tech leaders here in Austin, places that are able to do that. They rally a lot of people and capital and resources around what the world could be, right? I mean, the whole world, the goal is to build forward and to push humanity forward. And I think I'm a techno-optimist. I think we all have to be techno-optimists if we want to build out of our current state and into a better world, right? You probably saw the news, A16Z, one of the biggest venture funds, just raised a massive successful round. Extremely exciting. And if you actually listen to, I do a lot of analysis and learning from them, and sort of, if you listen to their speaking, what they're saying is that they're supporting a future state world. And I think the best leaders are always building towards the future state world. They're empowering their people and they're empowering the resources and marshaling them together to build towards that future state. That's pretty exciting. I think the military teaches a lot of lessons of how to actually get there, the core leadership lessons of what to get. So you have the tech visionary, what we're going to do, and then you need sort of the military operational pairing. I think that's a nice pairing of how we're actually going to get there. What is the structure and what is the discipline lessons, right? The military is extremely disciplined and regimented. One of the biggest lessons on leadership in the military, it's almost hard to actually describe. I'm going to do my best in linguistic thought here to give it to you, is that like radical candor and openness and adjustments is like paramount in the military. So let me give you an example. Most people are not used to being corrected and don't like being corrected just as like a natural, human response, right? But in the military, it's expected and is mandated. So like you are expected to check your friend's, six and constantly give corrections and updates. In training, we were yelled at for, and when I say yelled, right, this is sort of a brutal type of yelling, but we were punished, is a better way to say it, for very small mistakes, right? I remember one time my backpack underneath the bunk was faced the wrong way, and the guy, tore into me for a ridiculous amount of time, spitting in my face and, putting the fear of God into me. Just because my backpack was faced the wrong way. Something that a passerby wouldn't even be able to understand. I don't even know how he saw it. But anyway, and that compounds, there's 1,000 lessons like that. In the military, if your shoelaces are tied incorrectly, there's a specific way you lace your boots, they will see that and they'll scream at you, literally. And I watched this happen hundreds of times where people's shoelaces were tied incorrectly and they get you. And they're doing all these things for this attention to detail and, instilling discipline and doing things the right way. I mean, they care about the way your belt buckle is put and the way your hat is starched. And like, it is your cover. It is a completely, unique little world in and of itself where you're memorizing all these little day-by-day rules. It's very hard to explain the experience without being there, but obviously I can do my best. Now, the point being, if one of us messed up, we would all mess up. Right, similar to a startup, all of our equity is tied together. Startup is such a unique vehicle that incentivizes performance, because if we all do well, we're all going to make money, and if we all don't do well, we're all going to lose. And so startups can go out of business, right? They're only as good as their next funding round. So what is unique in the military and is so open, and I'm trying to instill this in the company, and I think a lot of great companies have this, but nothing compared to the level of the military, is the radical candor to be able to fix we call it, fix yourself, but to be able to fix your peers. I'll give the most poignant example. There's something called an Irish pennant. It's called an IP. It's when a little piece of string, you have them on all your clothes, is like dangling off, right? You see that constantly on all your pieces of clothing. You just don't pay attention to it. But on a military uniform, again, if the drill instructor sees an IP, they'll freaking lose their mind, right? Again, almost not noticeable to the human eye, but these guys are so trained, it's like they can see one from like a mile away. Your friends are expected to pick and point those out, and when they walk by you and say, hey, you got to cut that. Hey, you got to fix your shoes. Hey, fix your belt. Hey, do this. And it comes in a biting, aggressive way, but it's actually extremely effective, because once you break down your wall and realize they're only just trying to help each other, and you literally have complete candor between each other, you can tell each other everything. Hey, that speech you gave, that was a 5 out of 10. You should have improved this, and this. And be like, hey, thanks, man. Like, that's great. You become so open to feedback, and feedback becomes so constant on the human level. you literally get better and better every day. And so feedback is a huge learning lesson for the military. You try to instill that in companies, but we do it even more and more than you think. And then I'm going to get really meta for a second. What's the reason the way all this AI gets better and better? It's because constant feedback and constant data, right? It's taking in data, it's ingesting data and training on it and getting better and better and better. So if you use the neural net in your head in the same type of way, that constant feedback loop is a huge, benefit. And you want to be taking in as much data and feedback and correction and reinforcement learning as possible. So our brains operate very much like this AI system. We just have to be more open and let the human emotion by the wayside to operate like that. So I hope that was a good little tie-in together there.
No, man, you're brilliant. I can see how you can bring so much operational excellence from the military to what you're doing now. We'll wrap up with this. What do you define as greatness?
Ooh, I like that question. What is true greatness? You look at, you just instantly go to like Wayne Gretzky, right? The great one, hockey, or Muhammad Ali, some of these great performers and people that have achieved so much in their field. And again, you could talk about macro fields and micro fields, right? You could talk about the field of localized nursing in the Austin region, right? There's someone who's the greatest, nurse in the local region. I think on like a spiritual level, right, greatness is, when the soul is doing exactly what it's meant to be, right? Like that's what flow state is described as, when, you're truly just locked in doing what you're meant to be doing, both in the small temporal time of like, I'm at my computer and I'm enjoying the day, to the like multi-year time of, I truly am meant to be leading this company and being, this is exactly what I'm meant to be doing. And this is the space I want to be in, et cetera, right? So you can extrapolate between, time and sizing. But I think that core thread of greatness, being in the place that you're meant to be and excelling at it in that time is a good measure for it. And the way I measure, I have three sort of core principles. I have three principles and then three rules of the universe I try to live my life through and sort of look at a vein for. And so the principles I like to say are compounding. So the universal laws are regression to the mean, compounding, and duality. I can go into all those. Good sort of thing to wrap on. A numbers guy, or I was trained for sort of finance. Regression to the mean is a universal law. If you look at the way humans do, you look at all the football players in the world, like there's going to be great ones that are standard or two standard deviations away from the mean, but people still fall back to a mean, right? There is an average, NFL player. There is an average, performer, and then people fall a little bit above or a little bit below that. It's very hard to consistently beat the average. You look at that for stock returns, hedge funds. I mean, everything usually falls down to a mean. Startup outcomes, same thing. The second thing is compounding. The most powerful force in economics in the universe is compounding. You look at, interest, and as it grows and grows and grows over time, give enough time, and it's the greatest wonder in the world. That's the famous Warren Buffett lesson in learning. And the third part of that is duality. And duality is that there's two sides to everything, right? I think that it's always two sides to every story. It's black and white and gray. Like there's always just two, Republicans and Democrats. There's always two halves to a whole, if that makes sense. And so I sort of accepted at a young age, those are the three universal laws I think are most powerful and sort of guide. And so I tried to create three principles around that to deal with. And so the last one, go reverse order, duality. The way you deal with duality is self-reflection, constant journaling, constant analysis, thinking back, how did I do in this performance? Give me the feedback. Always do that. I do journal, actually. I'm proud of that. Right? I write a lot of, it's funny, right? Journaling, like that's the best way to self-reflect, is to put into writing, what did I accomplish this week? Did I meet my goals? Put it on paper, just a very personal dialogue, personal story writing with yourself. Back to the beginning when I wrote about, emphasizing the story, I write sort of for the story. That's key. The second, on the compounding level, I call it purposeful energy. Right? The things you do, the actions you take in the small one day are going to compound over time, over the year. You need to be extremely purposeful with what you're actually doing. Who are you spending time with? What are you thinking about? What are you spending time on? That compounds drastically over time. Are your habits going to compound healthfully? Are you going to, are you eating healthy? Are you working out? So compounding really matters. purposeful energy, helps solve the compounding thing. And the first one on regression to the mean, the only way to beat that, and this is a good wrap, is innovation, right? The way you beat regression to the mean is constantly do things differently and innovate, because you're going to fall down to the mean eventually. So you need these bursts of innovation, bursts of uniqueness, bursts of change to get there. That's really the best way to go, right? That's the way where you can outperform on a long-term basis, but also on various short-term cycle basis. Is if you do something very unique and different, you can have some real alpha and arbitrage in the short term. So those are the three. I don't know, Matt Weiss laws, the laws that I try to live by, if that makes sense.
We got to call you Matt Wise, bro, not Matt Weiss. You got some wisdom,
Yeah,
bro.
Matt Weiss. Okay.
This is awesome, man. Thank you for coming on. Where can people find you? Lastly, wrapping up here.
Yeah, biggest thing, anyone wants to reach out, and I'll post this. LinkedIn is the easiest thing, just Matt Weiss, MattWeiss. Obviously, Circuit and his company, you can link me on there. The company is circuit.ai. That's probably my most public page. But my LinkedIn is my only social profile. I try to keep a lower profile. I don't know. But that's my one media page, if that makes sense. So
awesome, man. Well, appreciate you coming on.
absolutely. Thank you guys. It's great.
Thank you, Matt.